makes a great anchorage in strong southeast winds. The mud bank dries in spring tides, perfect for a trailer sailor.
First crocodile for the trip, only about 2.5 metres, but always makes you a bit nervous when you see your first one.
Silica Beach is named for its fine white sand, which along with its azure waters make it a picture-perfect location.
A day later we are joined by Don and Aggie on Moonbeam, a Far 30, the only other trailer sailor we met on the trip. As we were to find out for the rest of the trip, cruising to Kimberley can be a very social experience, with sundowners on Moonbeam later that day. To have two trailer sailors sharing Crocodile Creek at the same time was amazing enough, but to find out that Don and Aggie were doing the same trip but in reverse, Darwin to Derby, was incredible. Naturally, we shared notes on where we had been and what to expect. The famous swimming tank with its infinity window overlooking Silver Goal, fed by the same spring as the water pipe on the barge landing. We head down to the spectacular falls for the afternoon and to anchor for the night. And a waterfall cascading down a long rock face. Pools before returning to the dinghy.
On a flooding tide, we headed into Doubtful Bay towards Red Cone Creek to spend some time at Ruby Falls. Dinghy ride from the main anchorage to reach Ruby Falls. We reached the narrow entrance of Sampson Inlet with a building wind from astern. The creek further up makes for a gorgeous walk.
It's absolutely amazing some of the places these boabs grow.
Many died in the ensuing months of torment along with most of their livestock. Despite investing their life savings, the lucky ones left in the first few months, losing everything they owned but saving themselves. Of those that died and were left behind now rest on the lonely sheep island that overlooks Camden Harbour. Only one lonely headstone remains, that of Mary Jane Pascoe, who died in childbirth at the age of 30 from acute fever.
And whilst hauling it in, we are boarded by fisheries to inspect our licences and catch the nearby sidearm in the hope of finding fresh water for a wash.
of rocks in the water before it, so you can't really get the dinghy very close for refilling water, but it's a beautiful spot. Lovely paperbacks, cliffs and gorgeous scenery and fresh running water. And we'll probably just have a bath here. Always nice for a nice freshwater bath.
It is.
This one's Hanover Creek, I assume it's...
The water was alive with small fish and freshwater shrimp. We arrive at Careening Bay on a falling tide, so anchor out instead of our plan to careen the boat on the beach. The crew of Her Majesty's cutter the Mermaid were instructed to leave proof of their visit. We anchor in Wherry Bay and are joined by the prawn trawler Levique. We chat with the crew on the beach, and before they leave they give us a bag of fresh banana prawns. Art records the early interactions between Europeans and the indigenous tribes, with images of boats and strange figures with pipes in their mouths. After some time ashore on the beach, we retire to Naringa for a delicious meal of fresh fish and barbecued prawns as the day fades away to the west. At the beach, we look back and realise that we are being watched.
It's a little bit interesting to look at the picture because the canoe appears to have gunnels on it, which I thought probably weren't all that common in traditional Aboriginal canoes. With quite elaborate headdresses, especially the one over here.
Shore art is considered to be the older of the two and is often overpainted by the Wandjina style art you find elsewhere in the Kimberley. Removing the outboard motors, fuel tank and battery from the sinking dinghy, the very large croc returned. Luckily by that stage I was no longer in the dinghy.
This is the hole that one large and very mean croc did to our dinghy this morning. Fortunately we were not in it. This is only half of the damage. We should be able to fix it, but it's not been the best day in the Kimberley today.
Each patch required 3 coats of 2-part cement applied to both the patch and the boat. The Rock's anchorage is centrally located amongst the Osborne Islands, giving moderate protection from sea breezes and trade winds. It is well named, with many outlying rocky outcrops scattered in the surrounding waters. The Apartments is a must-see, with an extensive labyrinth of caves and passages under a huge rocky outcrop.
Another interesting art site in the Osborne Island area. Can't decide whether they're fish or birds.
At least we're catching fish.
After washing down the cockpit, we are visited by a friendly tawny nurse shark looking for a feed.
He smells it.
Sail only while we negotiate the narrow pass along the northwest corner of the island. After anchoring, we go ashore and immediately attract the attention of a large and aggressive looking croc.
Tony, you got a smaller finger down the front.
Not keen on you, mate. Bugger off.
To allow for enough time for us to have a good look around.
This is the DC3 wreck on the salt pan across from Jar Island.
Honeymoon Bay is exposed to the northwest sea breezes and proved to be a miserably rolly and uncomfortable anchorage. We talked to Joy, the owner of the campground, and organised for her to collect 6 jerry cans from Columbaroo the next day. At low tide, the sandbar at the entrance makes for interesting walks ashore. Time to return to Naringa and head east once more and on towards the iconic King George River.
So this is going into the King George River. Absolutely beautiful scenery, beautiful country.
The towering cliffs dwarf Naringa as she wanders through the magnificent cathedral of ancient rock. The view is truly awe-inspiring and an experience that words cannot really describe. We find many great examples of Bradshaw paintings above the main falls provided a welcome swim.
Showering in the Kimberley. Best shower you could ever have.
We join Mark and Dee from the motor cruiser Arrow and Rick and Nina from the cruising cat Duplicat to climb to the top and explore the area. We find another thylacine-like painting, suggesting they may have inhabited the area in times gone by. The water lily fringed billabongs make for a refreshing swim.
We drop anchor near the amphitheatre, a stunning small bay fringed by towering cliffs, and walk upstream towards a distant mount on the horizon. The river widens into a rocky, boulder-strewn watercourse stretching off into the distance. For the next 2 days we keep the boat on a compass bearing of 50 degrees. By daybreak we are out of sight of land and on our way across Bonaparte Gulf, beam reaching in a gentle northwesterly. As the sun falls into the sea, we download the latest grid file which forecasts 20 to 25 knot winds around the top of the Cox Peninsula to round into Darwin. With the wind on the nose and against a very strong tide, the morning brings some of the roughest conditions we experienced on the trip. After 1,372 nautical miles and 69 days on the water, with Naringa looking a little worse for wear, we drop her mast and ready her for her 5,000 kilometre trip home.